Do you know the story of how Pokémon took over the world? Well, grab the popcorn and make yourself comfortable. I'll tell you. First, Pokémon isn't as old as you might think. Your grandparents and even your parents were growing up without knowing it. This is the man we should thank for it, a Japanese inventor of the game, Satoshi Tajiri. In 1990, Satoshi came up with the idea of pocket monsters. And no, I'm not talking about the Tamagotchi. Pocket monsters are Pokémons. He was inspired by his early memories of exploring his garden and collecting different bugs. Satoshi was being called Dr. Bug and even wanted to become an entomologist, which is a fancy word for a bug scientist. So, he came up with the game idea and pitched it for Nintendo. At first, the company wasn't sure about it, having doubts about the idea and its implementation. You see, Satoshi was excited to make it possible to connect two players, and the company was confused by the idea of it and couldn't imagine how to make it possible. Still, after a bit of thinking, they accepted the idea and gave it a green light. Satoshi worked on the game for 6 years, along with a legendary game maker, Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who created Mario and The Legend of Zelda. On February 27, 1996, Nintendo released 2 game versions of Pokémon in Japan, Pokémon Red and Pokémon Green. Back then, Game Boy wasn't available in colors, so the first Pokémon editions were black and white, despite the name. The games were on a cartridge, and players could trade with each other by connecting to each other's Game Boy using a cable. The games were a raging success from the very beginning. Millions of copies were sold. A year later, the games went overseas. Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue were released in the United States. A couple of years later, they reached Europe too. 1 year after the Japanese release, the company released the first 102 Pokémon trading game cards. By today, more than 30 billion cards have been printed. There's a Pokémon Card World Championship tournament, and some people pay thousands of dollars for the rarest of cards. The most expensive Pokémon card sold so far cost its owner $369,000. Originally, there were 151 Pokémons that were introduced in the first 2 editions of the game, and they are called Generation 1. Now, there are over 1,000 Pokémons and 9 generations of them. Some of the characters are actually based on creatures from the Japanese mythology. For example, Ninetales is inspired by the nine-tailed fox of East Asian myth. Foxes are quite famous Asian spirits that are depicted as mischievous shapeshifters who are believed to have magic powers and grow more powerful as they get older. The nine-tailed fox is the most powerful and wise fox spirit. It has huge powers and lives a very long life. Whoever grabs any one of the 9 tails without permission will be cursed for 1,000 years. There's also Drowsy, a psychic Pokémon whose appearance is based on the dream-eating tapir Baku. Baku are Japanese mythological creatures that devour nightmares. There's a legend that Baku were created out of the spare pieces that were left after creating all other animals. These creatures often appear in Japanese art and folklore, and apparently now also in anime and manga. If your nose is itchy when you wake up, it means that Drowsy ate your dreams through your nose. The franchise has its own legends. There's even a group of so-called legendary Pokémons. They're very rare and incredibly powerful, and they're featured in the Legends of Pokémon world. New legendary Pokémons appear in every generation, but there are 4 original ones from the first generation. First, the 3 Cantonian legendary birds. It's a trio of birds representing each season, except for fall. There's an ice one called Articuno. When flapping its wings, it can cause snowfalls. Pokémon World Legends say that Articuno appears before travelers are lost in icy regions. There's also Zapdos, an electric Pokémon that releases electricity that can cause thunderstorms, and it only appears during them. The last bird is Moltres, a fire type that can create flames and heal itself by dipping itself into the magma of a volcano. The legend says that it migrates to the south when spring is coming and brings the warmth to the cold lands. The fourth original legendary Pokémon is Mewtwo. It's a cat-like Pokémon with psychic powers that was created by scientists via genetic manipulation. It's one of the most powerful Pokémons in the franchise. The names of the legendary Pokémons are very well thought through. The creators wanted them all to have the same name in all languages, so they do careful research to make sure that a chosen name will work in every country and won't have to be changed to something else. There are also a couple of really weird Pokémons. There's a Girafarig. That's a cross between a giraffe and a zebra. The weird part is that instead of a tail, there's a zebra face. There's a Dugtrio, 3 heads poking out from the ground. Garbodor is a pile of garbage and waste that produces gas to poison its opponents. There's also this one, Mimikyu. It looks like Pikachu on a very, very bad hair day. But actually, it's an original Pokémon that hides its true appearance by mimicking others. When Pikachu became popular, Mimikyu adopted his appearance, trying to get trainers' attention. So, we all know Pikachu, one of the most famous Pokémons. Do you know where its name comes from? It comes from the Japanese sound Pika, the noise an electric spark makes, and Chew, the sound a mouse makes. So, his name means something like sparkle mouse noise. Also, fun fact, do you know what Pokeball's design was inspired by? Campbell's soup cans, for real. No one knows why soup, but we can all see the resemblance. In 1997, just 1 year after the first release of the games, Pokémon hit the screens with an animated TV series. In Japan, the main character and his rival are called Satoshi and Shigeru, paying tribute to the franchise's inventors. In the worldwide version of the cartoon, Satoshi's name is changed to Ash Ketchum. The last name is not a weird tribute to ketchup, though. It's meant to sound close to Catchem, as in the iconic phrase, catch them all. We all know that Ash's Pokémon is Pikachu, but originally it was supposed to be this cutie, Clefairy. The anime was also meant to have 1 season only, but fans refused to accept that. Today, there are 25 seasons of Pokémon released, which is over 1,000 episodes. The show is still running, being one of the longest-running anime series. A year later, an animated Pokémon movie hit the screens and became another success. Today, there are 23 of those, and also 1 live-action movie starring Ryan Reynolds. But here's the thing. Pokémon was supposed to come to an end in 1999. Pokémon Gold and Pokémon Silver were supposed to be the last games of the franchise, but fans wanted more, and they made developers make more, and so they kept producing games. We all remember 2016, that Pokémon Go craze which made thousands of people getting out of their houses to catch Pokémons on the streets of their cities. The game was released 20 years after the release of the franchise. Just to put into perspective how big it is, the game has been downloaded over 1 billion times and over 88 billion Pokémons were caught. Were you one of the players? How much did you catch? In 2018, Nintendo released a remake of the first original Pokémon games and broke all records in the first week. Now, there are 122 Pokémon-related games released, grouped into 9 generations. And that's not the end of it. It's been around for about 27 years, and Pokémons still own people's hearts all over the planet. Niue, an island in the South Pacific, even put Pikachu on a special edition of a coin. Maybe they're the biggest Pokémon fans in the world.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.